A very good morning to you all and welcome back. You're watching World News and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. NATO defense ministers are gathering at the alliance's HQ in Brussels. They are set to discuss the implementation of the Hague commitments, including modernization of the armed forces and increasing defense spending. Ongoing support for Ukraine through multilateral frameworks will also dominate the agenda as the Ukraine contact group is to meet later in the afternoon. We have joining us now our defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek, who is on the ground. Zuzanna, what can we expect the key issues are going to be?
Good morning, Claudia. So as you mentioned, this meeting primarily serves as a preparation for the Ankara summit, which is scheduled to take place later on in July of this year. We know that the Americans have sent out a list of 5 questions pertaining to the implementation of the Hague summit from last year, and that is the modernization of the armed forces, the ongoing increases to defense spending, and bolstering the numbers of the individual countries' armed forces. At the same time, however, there is a lot of murmur going around about the fact that they are absent from this meeting. Specifically, Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, is missing for the second time in a row, having had sent his deputy Colby in his place instead. Now, this ministerial meeting comes at the back of the announcement of the Arctic Sentry mission yesterday. This is a multilateral mission aiming to bolster the defenses in the high north, around Greenland, the Arctic subcircle. And we know that although the NATO alliance cites the ongoing need to bolster or secure its strategic areas of interest as the High North is becoming, this comes at the back foot of the Americans also insisting that that's where their strategic interest lies. So we know that on the one hand, the Americans are insisting on their strategic interests and insisting on Europe taking more charge of their own defenses. At the same time, however, they are absent from this ministerial meeting, to some extent at least. When asked about whether this sends a particular signal about the shape of the NATO alliance, multiple of the ministers of defense who have been arriving since this morning, they've underlined that NATO is stronger than ever, but the issue of certain doubt remains. Now, as you also mentioned, apart from the ongoing relationship between the NATO allies, the support and ongoing support for Ukraine is also set to dominate the agenda, particularly in the second part of the day, as the Ukraine contact group is expected to meet. Now, we know, as we've heard from the Secretary General of the NATO alliance, Mark Rutte, during his opening remarks earlier today, that Ukraine's air defense needs are most pressing that they've ever been, with around only 20% of Ukraine's skies currently secured with air defenses. Additionally, the ongoing military financial aid is also going to be discussed. And when it happens, and as it happens, we will bring you the latest updates.
Thank you so much, Zuzanna. Keep us up to date on the latest developments. This was Zuzanna Jurek, our defense correspondent, reporting live from Brussels. NATO has launched a new mission called Arctic Sentry, aiming to boost military presence in the high north to improve security in the region amid the row over Greenland. Last night on World News Tonight, I spoke to the former Slovakian defense minister, Martin Sklenár, who told me that the Arctic Sentry is an important operation that coordinates all of NATO's efforts in the north.
It was very high, the need for making sure that NATO has a coherent strategy and action in the Arctic. This is what the Arctic Sentry is about. We have heard critics that NATO is just repackaging things that it would do anyway, just to make sure that the relationship between Europe and the Trump administration is mitigated, and there are no further fallouts. But what this means actually is organizing NATO's possibilities and action into one coherent operation, so to say, the Sentry type of operation that NATO has launched both on the eastern flank and in the Baltic Sea, just representing the attention and the focus that now NATO as an organization, and with that all the countries that are members of NATO, focus on Arctic, on Greenland, and on the wider high north territory, which is critical for collective defense, especially for European, but also for American, for the United States. That area of the world is very important for making sure that the U.S. is secure against the threats coming from Russia and the provocations from China.
Wednesday brought more death and destruction to Ukraine as Russia continues its attacks on two primary targets, the civilian population and the energy grid. But while Russia's assault continues, its losses are also piling up, with Ukraine targeting its sanctioned refineries and SpaceX cutting off access to Starlink. More updates from Ukraine in Anastasia Yanchenko's report.
Another tough 24 hours for Ukraine. At least 9 people, including 3 toddlers, were killed and 39 others were injured. Overall, Russia launched more than 120 drones, striking multiple regions. The attacks were mostly aimed at destroying Ukraine's already fragile energy grid, leaving workers with no chance to restore damaged facilities.
I just want to cry. Nothing else, especially since some of the equipment had already been repaired and put back into operation, and the work that had been done is now being redone.
These attacks come amid the US administration's continued belief that peace in Ukraine is as close as it has ever been. But Ukrainian war analysts say they see no positive signals that point toward peace.
All these American
Ukraine, and of course on so many other issues. Ukraine's security is linked with our own. We must ensure that when this war ends, Russia will never try again to invade Ukraine. This concludes this public part of our meeting. I want to thank the media for joining us, which means, could you please leave the room? Thank you.
And we continue. The fallout from the release of the Epstein files is causing a stir in the United Kingdom. Keir Starmer's government is in the line of fire in what could be one of the greatest governmental crises in decades. And as the question of Starmer's possible resignation hangs in the air, the royal family is also under major scrutiny due to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's close connections to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. More on how the latest revelations are playing out in the UK in Aisha Abadji's report.
The political aftershocks from the latest Epstein file release are now rattling Downing Street, and this friendship might bring about the imminent downfall of the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador.
This is Lord Peter Mandelson, Britain's former ambassador to Washington, who resigned last week after documents revealed extensive past ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
He was a high-ranking minister. He'd been an EU commissioner. Again, the question is, we only know this almost because of the Epstein documents. So what else was he leaking when he was EU commissioner?
It was the Prime Minister's decision to bring Mandelson back into government despite earlier warnings about reputational risk. And despite the pressure from within his own Labour Party,
the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change.
The man from Downing Street insists he's staying put.
I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country.
But adversaries are circling.
Starmer goes, maybe what the public really deserve is a general election, and that is what we'll push for.
But tremors reach far beyond the UK.
I just asked a question. Is your money dirty money?
No, it's not. So, in fact...
Why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it.
Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender who died in 2019 while awaiting trial for trafficking minors, was worth nearly $600 million at his death. He had major international ties, including to Central Europe.
Information has emerged concerning individuals who, for example, informed Mr. Epstein in Krakow that they already had a group of Polish women or girls.
In Warsaw, the Polish government has formed a special task force to examine whether any Polish nationals were involved in a way that warrants investigation.
It's a horrific affair involving a paedophile that could have security implications for the Polish state if there is a Russian involvement in particular.
The Polish task force will examine whether Russian intelligence services may have played a role in parts of the Epstein operation, which the Russian side still denies.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
With 3 million more documents still to be released, the Epstein files could trigger further resignations. For TVP World, I'm Aisha Badja.
At the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics, controversy has spread over Ukrainian athlete commemorating victims of the Russian invasion. The Ukrainian skeleton racer Władysław Heraskevich says he is ready to be disqualified on Thursday after the IOC warned him that he could not continue to race wearing helmet bearing images of athletes and children killed since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion.
Ukrainian skeleton racer Władysław Heraskevich was spotted sporting what media have called the helmet of remembrance at his most recent Olympic training session. This follows the ban of the helmet after Heraskevich wore it during an earlier training session. The people pictured on the helmet are athletes, including weightlifter Alina Peregudova, the strongman Pavlo Ishchenko, and the ice hockey player Oleksiy Loginov. All of them died during Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Ukrainian skeleton racer claimed that despite the IOC ban, he will continue wearing the helmet, including on race day. Heraskevich's stance was supported by fellow athlete and lug racer Olena Smacha, who also chose to wear a piece of gear in protest of Russia's ongoing war on Ukraine. Following the ban on Heraskevich's helmet, Smacha donned a glove with the words "Remembrance is not a violation."
New drone footage shows the massive scale of ice-breaking operations currently underway on Poland's Vistula River. Authorities have launched the mission to clear a 200-kilometer stretch of ice and prevent any possibility of catastrophic flooding. Though the operation had previously been stalled by extreme cold that caused the river to freeze, the fleet of shallow draft icebreakers is now back in action. These vessels are working around the clock to open the river before massive ice floats begin moving downstream from southern Poland. By clearing these paths now, officials hope to prevent the formation of dangerous ice jams that could devastate communities along the Vistula during the spring melt. As Mexico prepares to host the 2026 Football World Cup alongside Canada and the U.S., Mexican authorities showcase the counter-drone security systems at their disposal. The arsenal that will help provide security during the sporting events includes radio frequency jammers, detection radars, and handheld anti-drone devices.
The main threat posed by a drone flying over any facility, whether it's a soccer stadium or an event held at the fan zones, is that an unauthorized drone could be flying overhead, trying to cause harm to the civilian population. That is why this type of equipment is used, to detect it in a timely manner and then jam it. We have different types of anti-drone systems, semi-fixed and portable, which will be integrated into the security plan to protect the airspace during the various events that will take place during the FIFA World Cup. The 3 venues where the World Cup matches will be held will be protected, as will be the fan zones. At these kinds of sites, equipment will be installed both in semi-fixed and mobile configurations. Our devices will be operating at all times, providing security, and coordination will be established with personnel from different institutions and agencies that will be authorized to fly drones.
And so this would be all the latest news for now. Thank you for joining me. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World on top of every hour for a portion of some of the latest news.